U.S. has confirmed sending Stinger missiles to Ukraine to help against Russian aircrafts and jets. Two senior U.S. officials publicly stated in the first week of March that the U.S. was delivering Stinger missiles to Ukraine, but neither the White House, the Pentagon, nor the State Department will confirm this. Stay till the end of the video to discover the other nations that are supplying Ukraine with weapons and to see what this new development means for the ongoing war. The House Armed Services Committee convened a hearing on Tuesday to learn more about how the United States interacts with partners and allies. Lawmakers grilled the two witnesses, Jessica Lewis, Assistant Secretary of State for Political Military Affairs, and Mara Karlin, Assistant Secretary of Defense for Strategy, Plans, and Capabilities, on America's lethal support to Ukraine in the aftermath of Russia's incursion. They both affirmed that Stingers have been dispatched to Ukraine. Around the 41-minute mark, Karlin was the most straightforward and honest. He said that Stinger missiles, Javelin missiles, anti-tank rocket systems, grenade launchers, over 2,000 tons of ammunition including mortar and artillery rounds, small arms, and machine guns have all been delivered since September. It's a long list of talents, to be sure. The decision follows Germany's statement that it will give Ukraine 500 Stinger missiles, as well as other weapons and equipment. Stingers are high-speed missiles that are used to shoot down helicopters and other aircraft. Stronger weaponry have been requested by Ukrainian officials. Since January, the Baltic states have been supplying Ukraine with Stingers, and they had to get permission from the US to do so. The first week of March saw the first delivery of the anti-aircraft Stingers to Ukraine, with 200 arriving on Monday alone. The fact that the US delivered such weaponry to Kyiv to assist the battle of Russian President Vladimir Putin's soldiers is thus a matter of public record and reportage. However, no other American official will confirm what Lewis and Karlin said in public. A senior defense official would only state that the US will continue to provide Ukraine with the necessary tools to protect itself, including the best systems and weaponry for dealing with threats on the ground as well as airborne threats. And that was it. The government does not want to escalate tensions with Russia by boasting about the surrender of Stingers, according to the best information obtained by several news sites after consulting with US and European officials as well as specialists. It's a powerful weapon that will aid Ukrainian defense by killing Russian pilots flying low-flying planes. Since the invasion began, this has also been the administration's strategy. The world is aware, and Russia is aware, that the United States is supporting Ukraine. President Joe Biden and his team, on the other hand, prefer to remain mute when it comes to the most provocative actions, such as sending lethal and effective weapons and intelligence. Clearly, the administration believes that any official confirmation from the White House would be viewed by Moscow as a significant escalation in the U.S. race to deliver Stinger anti-aircraft missiles to Ukraine's embattled military. President Joe Biden has approved a $350 million package of lethal aid to Ukraine. The package is said to include more Javelin anti-tank missiles and Stinger anti-aircraft missiles, which Ukrainian and U.S. officials claim have proved particularly effective in stifling invading Russian forces. The latest lethal aid agreement represents the first time the U.S. has agreed to directly deliver Stinger missiles to Ukraine, according to Army Times. Former Army Lieutenant General Jim Dubik said that once the Stinger is operational, it has the potential to be a game changer. Quote, "The Russians don't have air dominance, but they do have air superiority, and the Stingers won't take that away, but it will be a contested airspace, which will hamper Russian operations and strengthen Ukraine's defense." End quote. The capacity to perform air operations without prohibitive hindrance by the opposing force is how the U.S. military defines air dominance. Air supremacy, often known as dominance, refers to a situation in which the opposing air force is unable to interfere effectively. The delivery of the Stinger is unknown at this moment, with U.S. officials apparently informing journalists that they are still working out the logistics. Ukraine got an undetermined quantity of Stinger missiles from Latvia and Lithuania earlier this year. On February 24th, Russia launched an invasion of Ukraine, attacking Ukrainian air bases, command centers, radio stations, and other military equipment. This is a serious situation. When the U.S. secretly supplied Afghan rebels fighting Soviet forces in the mid-1980s, they did so with captured Soviet weapons laundered through Israel and other countries. Because it was deemed too dangerous to shoot down Soviet helicopters with weapons that had the American government's fingerprints on them, the roundabout approach was necessary. The United States directly supplied Stingers to the insurgents in 1985, marking the first time the American weapons were used to kill Soviet soldiers during the Cold War. After the Soviets left Afghanistan, there were so many Stingers that it was hard to account for them them, and their proliferation still keeps anti-terrorism professionals awake at night. One reason the US and other NATO nations may be deploying so many javelins to Ukrainian forces is because, in comparison to more advanced weaponry systems, they are very simple to operate. Two Marine veterans told Task and Purpose that learning to use a javelin takes only 20 or 30 minutes. The weapon's targeting pod feels like a video game, making it even easier for younger troops to learn, and the Russian convoys that stretch for miles without air support provide target-rich environments for Ukrainians armed with the weapons. Operators can strike targets from above or straight on using javelin missiles, which have two modes of fire. The weapons can also be deployed against aircraft that are slow or low flying. According to Marine Colonel James W. Frey, a senior military fellow at the Center for a New American Security think tank in Washington, D.C., another important advantage of javelins and Stinger anti-aircraft missiles is that they are both fire-and-forget systems. Javelins have a long range, and by striking military vehicles from above, they hit them where the armor is weakest, according to Frey. Unlike the previous BGM-71 TOW anti-tank missiles, Javelin operators do not have to retain their crosshairs on the target after firing. The Javelin is useful and practical for new troops because all they have to do is see it, shoot it, run away, reload, and get ready for the next one. And that weapon will almost certainly strike the target. The shooter would have most likely moved from this position by the time he is discovered. Frey, who has been in the Marine Corps for 30 years, also has considerable expertise with Stinger anti-aircraft missiles, which are especially effective against targets that the shooter can see, such as low-flying helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft taking off or landing. Quote, "Beating a Stinger is quite difficult," Frey added. "Generally, if you can see your target, you have a pretty decent chance of killing it." End quote. For the time being, the Ukrainians have kept their Russians from surrounding the majority of their country. Even if Kiev falls, the Russians may be forced to launch a counterinsurgency war. Ukraine's potential to mount an insurgency against the Russians would rely on how much of the western half of the nation it can hold control over, according to retired Army General David Petraeus, who led U.S. troops in both Iraq and Afghanistan. He claims that the Russians have not committed enough soldiers to take Ukraine, let alone keep it. Before we show why other nations may be supplying Ukraine, be sure to subscribe so you can get more content like this. For years, there was an implicit policy to prevent American and Soviet forces from murdering one another. During the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, President John F. Kennedy did everything he could to avoid destroying the missile sites so that American bombs would not murder Russian technicians, fearing the repercussions. However, now, the Stingers will no longer be subjected to a geopolitical spin cycle. The transactions are no longer hidden in any way. Ukrainian forces will use weapons openly supplied by the US to shoot down Russian planes. This is a significant change in the course of events. Tell us what you think this new development will mean for the war. And while you're here, be sure to check out our video on Russia's lethal and unbeatable military nuclear capability.